The room was quiet, too quiet for someone who had grown up in a world of cameras, producers, and lights. Mykelti Brown sat in front of a small wooden desk, her hands resting on an open notebook. The ink had dried from the last thing she wrote. The truth has been waiting long enough. For years, she had smiled for the cameras, laughed at scripted jokes, and pretended that everything was fine. But deep down, she knew something was broken, something that no network edit could fix. Tonight, she wasn't filming. She wasn't being directed. She was remembering. And when Mykelti Brown remembers, the world listens. From the outside, Sister Wives was the story of a big, complex, yet loving family, 4 wives, 1 husband, and a sea of children bound by faith, chaos, and togetherness. Millions tuned in, thinking they were watching truth unfold in real time. But Mykelti remembers it differently. She remembers the long days of filming, the microphones taped to their backs, the red recording light blinking like a silent eye that never blinked. She remembers producers whispering, "Let's do that again," but more emotional. And she remembers her mother's tired smile, the one that said, "Just get through this, sweetheart." TLC wanted a story of unity and conflict, of jealousy and love, but not of pain, the kind that lived behind closed doors. To the audience, they were a modern-day family experimenting with love. To Mykelti, they were characters, each one edited to fit a role that sold. It started small. One afternoon, during season 5, Mykelti overheard a conversation between 2 producers. They weren't talking about camera angles or lighting, they were arguing about what storyline would bring more ratings. "Greater than, if we push more tension between Christine and Robyn, the numbers will climb," one said. "But that's not true," the other replied. "They're fine this week." "Then make it look like they're not," the first voice said flatly. And that was the moment the illusion cracked for Mykelti. Scenes that had once felt like glimpses of real life were now performances. Words were spliced, moments rearranged, tears exaggerated by editing cuts. She began noticing how producers would isolate family members before filming, feeding them selective questions, planting subtle doubts, and gently encouraging emotional reactions. Her father, Kody, became a man defined by frustration. Her mother, Christine, was portrayed as jealous. And Robyn, the newcomer, was shown as either the savior or the villain, depending on the week. To Mykelti, it was chess. And her family were the pieces. There's a limit to pretending. During the filming of a family trip episode, Mykelti saw what the cameras weren't supposed to capture. The tension between Kody and Robyn was thick, not because of the show, but because of exhaustion. Years of scrutiny had carved invisible scars into everyone. She remembers one night vividly. The crew had packed up, the lights had dimmed, but the microphones were still on. Kody's voice broke the silence. "Greater than, I can't even tell what's real anymore. Are we living this, or are we filming it?" Robyn didn't answer. She just stared at the floor. That night, Mykelti cried in her room. Not because her parents were fighting, but because she realized they couldn't even do that privately anymore. Every moment, even the painful ones, had become part of the show. The next day, TLC edited the footage into a touching reconciliation. But Mykelti knew better. Months passed. Filming continued. And then came the scene. It was supposed to be a family meeting, routine, emotional, scripted in tone but spontaneous in feeling. Only this time, something unexpected happened. Christine refused to repeat a line. Robyn snapped. Kody shouted. And the cameras caught all of it. The unfiltered pain, the real arguments, the moments when the illusion shattered completely. It was all there, raw and powerful. But that footage never aired. Producers called it too damaging. TLC executives labeled it off-brand. The tape was buried under hours of alternate edits, and a cheerful montage replaced it. Yet Mykelti never forgot, because that moment was the truth, and she saw it erased before her eyes. She began keeping notes, writing down what really happened, what was shown, and what was changed. A hidden diary of the real Sister Wives. Years went by. The show evolved, relationships changed, and new seasons brought new narratives. But the diary stayed, pages filled with everything the network refused to show. Mykelti tried to move on. She got married, started a family, and lived away from the cameras. But silence, she discovered, is heavy. It waits. One night, she was scrolling through social media. A fan had commented, "Greater than, I wish I could see the real family, not just what TLC wants me to see." And something inside her broke open. She realized she didn't owe the network her silence anymore. She owed the audience the truth. When she finally sat in front of a microphone and said, "There are things TLC never wanted you to know," the internet exploded. Within hours, her words trended. Fans speculated, producers panicked, and for the first time, Mykelti felt free, not as a cast member, but as a person reclaiming her own story. She spoke calmly, but every word carried the weight of years. She talked about scenes edited out of context, about storylines crafted from half-truths, about how emotional breakdowns were encouraged because audiences connect with tears. She described how her mother was once told to act more hurt, how her father was asked to be more controlling, how arguments were restarted for better lighting. And most painfully, she revealed how the family's real struggles, financial, emotional, spiritual, were often ignored, replaced by dramatic but empty story arcs. "Greater than, they showed our conflicts," she said, "but not our healing. They showed our mistakes, but never our forgiveness. It wasn't revenge, it was clarity, and in giving that clarity, she gave fans a mirror, one that reflected not just her family, but the cost of turning real lives into entertainment." TLC's response came quickly, carefully worded, and predictably vague. "Greater than, we value all members of the Brown family and respect their perspectives. But the damage, or perhaps the healing, was already in motion." Fans started rewatching old episodes with new eyes, noticing the edits, the cuts, the manufactured tension. Former crew members came forward, anonymously confirming parts of her story. Even family members who once stayed silent began to speak in interviews. It wasn't about blame anymore, it was about understanding what fame had cost them. Kody's image shifted from patriarch to prisoner of his own narrative. Robyn's tears were seen in a new light. And Mykelti's courage became a spark for honesty. Weeks later, Mykelti sat by her window, holding her daughter in her arms. Outside, the world buzzed with speculation, but inside, there was peace. She realized she didn't hate TLC. She didn't even regret the show. Because without it, she wouldn't have understood the value of authenticity, the quiet, unfilmed moments that truly define a life. "Greater than, you can't edit truth," she whispered softly. "You can only delay it." Her diary, once a collection of pain, became a manuscript for healing. She began shaping it into a book, not of blame, but of lessons. A story not just about the Browns, but about anyone who's ever been misunderstood, misrepresented, or silenced. Months passed. The media cycle moved on, as it always does. But Mykelti's words remained. She didn't destroy a show. She reminded the world what reality truly means. The truth isn't glamorous. It doesn't trend forever. But it endures, quietly, patiently, until someone brave enough gives it a voice. And that's what Mykelti Brown did. She gave truth a voice. And in doing so, she took back her own.